So I determine when I'm going to use scaffolds by checking for understanding regularly of the class. So in the lesson I often had I had a hinge point question to make sure we could continue on. They had to understand what an appositive was before they were able to actually combine two sentences within a positive. Likewise, I also had lots of chinning, checking for understanding, looking if they were putting the commas in the right spot to make sure they understood where the appositive started, where it finished, and then from using that information, providing that scaffolds at point of need. All right, and in 5 seconds, you are going to chin that for me, as long as you've got one sentence. 5, 4, 3, 2, and chin it. Absolutely brilliant. Okay, can you park it? Don't rub it out. I am going to choose some people. Max, can you stand up for me? Stand, deliver your beautiful sentence there, please. So towards the beginning of the lesson, when it's heavily I do sort of practice and guided practice, it's a lot more co-constructing the sentences, pausing, checking for understanding, making sure I'm highlighting what information needs to form the appositive, and then slowly reducing that scaffold gradually. You have 1 minute. If you finish that sentence, you can do the second one. I like how people are putting the commas around the appositive.
Scaffolding, when you're first teaching a skill, is very hands-on for a teacher. You're really stepping students through a concept. You're using think alouds, you're explaining your thought process as to how you got to where you are. You're asking the students to explain that process back to you as well. What do you think, Kayla? Absolutely. And why is there less water? Absolutely. So harder for them to build that infrastructure. What did you think, Angus?
In the lesson that I did today, I knew that for some of my students, writing 2-digit numbers sometimes could be a challenge. Even though that they can say them and they understand them, they can't always get the numbers in the right order. So we give them a hundreds chart before they begin that lesson. They have that there as a scaffold that they can refer back to. It just takes off, I think, the worry for them about not being able to be successful. And if we teach students to use those scaffolds really carefully, they do it quite fluently and automatically, and it doesn't prevent them from really engaging in the problem that you're teaching at that time.
All right, on the board I have the problem that we are going to work on. Let's have a look at our problem. Read your problem with me. 34 plus 24 equals.
Scaffolds are a really important part of our lesson because they allow all of the students who need a little bit of additional support to engage in the lesson. At the same time, students are able to then manage themselves and their own understandings and know when those scaffolds might not be as necessary. By providing at the beginning of the lesson or at the beginning of a task, students can then know that they've got it, which allows them to feel confident and successful. But they also can make some decisions reflecting on their own learning that maybe I don't need to refer to it today, and they get to have that great joy of, knowing that they don't need that scaffold anymore. I think as the teacher, you have to monitor very carefully how much they're using it, how often they're using it, and start to encourage, for that scaffold to be taken away when the time is right.
Now, if you just want to use your whiteboard for this, you certainly can. Let me show you the next question. Ooh. All right, on your whiteboards, going through those steps all together.
In my maths lesson, there were multiple opportunities for me to check students' understanding. And through those opportunities, I began to notice that one of my students in the front row was demonstrating real mastery. He had great automaticity at applying those self-talk steps to the problems that I was presenting to him. So when we came to the you do part of the lesson, I directed that student to go straight to the challenge part and to skip the everybody part. He wasn't using the scaffold that he had previously needed. He was answering questions confidently and with automaticity, and he was able to explain his thinking. So it's really important for me, I guess, to monitor those check for understanding points of the lesson to help me to know when students are ready to be extended and challenged, and when students might need to stay with scaffolding a little bit longer.
Okay, My next problem is 46 plus 30. Read with me.
46 plus 30.
I manage scaffolding by prompting my students with breaking the question down, particularly with mark allocation in the daily review. When we come across exam questions, it's really important students know what depth they need for their questions. So by prompting them verbally and also as visually with the images, I find I'm able to get better quality answers from them. All right, Q-Hen, could you please tell me, where does cardiac muscle originate from in a complete sentence?
Cardiac muscles originate from the mesoderm.
Good. Cardiac muscle originate from the mesoderm. Remember, we learnt muscle, mesoderm. Both begin with M. So when I say muscle, can you please say mesoderm? Muscle.
Mesoderm.
Beautiful. The term contrast, we've seen that come up in questions a lot in exams. What does the word contrast mean? And if you had the question to contrast, what would be the best way to structure your answer? Off you go, Peshe. All right, Abby, could you please tell me, what does the verb contrast refer to and how would you structure your answer in an assessment?
With my vocabulary lesson, I was able to scaffold that throughout in ways of having the definition there on the whiteboard, so if students needed that to refer back to. But also as we practice more and more, I was able to get them to pair share, but change my questioning and get them to really justify why is that example of immense or why is that an example of darted, and really get them to justify. Also providing a sentence stem for them to use when writing and using that vocab word was a scaffold. But then again, building in that challenge, so taking it away and letting them, okay, you can write a sentence on your own without that there for you. All right, so our first word is darted. Can everyone say darted? Darted. Let's count the syllables in darted. Darted. How many? Two. Good. All right. Now I'm going to show you the meaning of darted. So track with me. Get your tracking finger. Thank you. To dart is to move suddenly or quickly. I want you to show me, pretend your hand is from the Iron Man, that hand. Remember the hand that fell off? Pretend you're darting to get those seagulls. Go, dart. Show me darted. Excellent, that's darted. Okay, Briar. Brilliant. This time you are going to finish the sentence stem on your board. You do not need to write the whole sentence. Finish off the stem. As money began falling from the sky, off you go.
So to explain new content to kids, I like to fade scaffolding. So we'll start off with concrete scaffold. So I'll have my place value discs and I'll physically manipulate them, moving them around the board. Sometimes the kids will use those as well. Then we'll move on to a more pictorial representation. So there'll be just images of those on the board. And then finally we'll show the abstract, so the algorithm, and I'll model that one. And then the students eventually will be able to use just the abstract part on their own independently. Nafez, what was my second step?
Your second step was to add the 10.
Beautiful, I added the 10s, thank you, Nafez.
When addressing misconceptions or students not understanding in the novel study, I saw that students were actually just retelling the story, and I just a bit of a verbal, I know we have been talking about what is exactly happening, but the question is, what is the main idea? So giving them those verbal reminders and those verbal scaffolds to be able to kind of stop those misconceptions from happening and actually hone in on the question being asked. Stop, look, and listen. I'm just listening to some conversations that are happening here. And when we're coming up with a main idea or concept, am I retelling what has happened in the story? No. I'm thinking about the key ideas or the key things that have happened and trying to create a category where all of these ideas fit into. All right? So this time we're not retelling the story, we're thinking about what the actual author or the message the author is trying to convey here. Continue.
So in my lesson with perimeter, we sort of started at the base level of perimeter as the outside of the shape, but as we went on, we went through sort of the steps that they had to follow to do that, and then I take those steps away. 16 plus 16 equals? 32 centimetres it would be. Does anyone know a different way that we could have done that? Yes.